Yes. So, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Vocal Code Conversations. I have the most amazing guest with me today. I am so blessed and I cannot wait for our conversation. And before I introduce her to you, I'm going to introduce myself to those of you who do not know. I am Sharleen, the vocal alchemist, and I help public speakers, I help recording artists and singers all around the world with, for public speakers, I help you with authenticity and the magnetism and the confidence and the authority to really have impacts in the world and to really receive those standing ovations, those repeat bookings that you desire. And for singers and recording artists, I help you with the agility to be able to riff up and down and back to front, down scales. And I also help you with the vocal stamina so that when you are on the road or have a grueling schedule, you're able to get through with no vocal damage, no vocal drama or fatigue. And I help you to sing really high notes, really low notes with maximum pleasure and maximum ease. And as a vocal alchemist, I am attuned to hearing the energetic frequencies of your speaking voice. And that tells me what I need to know in regards to your belief system and your characteristics. And what I do with my clients, and that's called a vocal code, by the way. And what I do with my clients is I help you to become aligned to those belief systems, to those characteristics that are actually going to help you create the vision that you desire. So if you are on the socials, you can follow me on Instagram, Sharleen, the Vocal Alchemist. And if you are on Facebook, it's the same. And if you are on YouTube, the channel is My Vocal Therapy. And if you are watching from YouTube right now, then this is the time to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. And if you desire to work with me or to check me out even more, you can go to myvocaltherapy.com. So as I mentioned, I have the most amazing guest with me today. Her name is Bea Manzini. And this conversation, and I haven't told you this yet, Bea, this was a direct, divine, inspired action.
Amazing.
I wasn't thinking in my head, who should I interview? I literally got the download. You were one of the first downloads that I received about who to reach out to. So I'm so thankful that you said yes. Bea Manzini is one of the most, she's one of the most creative and humble and loving people that you can come across in the industry. She's a writer, she's a creative, she's a journalist, and she curates events around film. And I'm pretty sure that as part of your work, you connect people as well so that they can really have synergy and create even more and collaborate. So welcome, my lovely.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Your introduction of yourself actually was giving me goosebumps when you were talking about how you facilitate and how you help and you harness people. I mean, everything that I do, lots of people are like, "Bea, you're everywhere, you do lots of stuff." And that is true, but actually at the core of everything that I do is to leave people and places in a better position than I found them in, however that articulation comes about. So whether it's me as a poet, sharing my words, or helping people to create words, or doing interviews, or, you know, sharing the films that I love, it is all centered around that compass.
I love that. And the kind of personality that you are, you're so approachable, my darling, and you are so open to people, and you'd be surprised. You know, there are people in the kind of arena that you are in, or in business, or in service to other people, who are not people. You know, they're not people person. And so it's lovely to come across somebody who has a natural affinity for connections with other people. And I would love to talk to you about your voice. I mean, I mentioned the vocal code, and we've had conversations off the air where I asked for your permission to read your vocal code, which you graciously said yes to. So I'll be doing that a bit later. And I'd love to know about your journey in regards to using your voice, whether it's written or whether it's spoken. How you've developed in using your voice, what you've noticed about yourself, what you've observed. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so my journey started quite many years ago, and kind of accidentally. So a friend of mine was having a cipher. It's for people that don't know what a cipher is. It's when poets come together and they kind of freestyle and they riff. And she invited me, and when she invited me, she just said, I've got a whole heap of people coming down, poets, they're mainly male, and I need some pretty faces. I will feed you and ply you with good energy. And I was kind of like, sure, I can come down, it'll be fun. No idea what I was walking into. When I walked into the room, you know, people had gathered, they were riffing and everything else. And as soon as you're in the space, you're in the cipher. So it came to the point where it was my turn in the room, and I had to ad-lib something along with the theme. And I didn't even think about it. I just was like, I'm not going to break this energy. I'm just going to go with the impulse. I said a few words and it was fine. And there were poets there who were from London who were like, we've never seen you before. Where do you perform? Etc. etc. And I was like, I'm not a poet. I'm not a performer. I was just, you know, doing a ting, trying a ting. And they were like, oh, okay. And then I kind of went home with that and sat with it for a little while and thought, well, if that is the kind of energy that I could create just on an impulse, what happens when I think about it? What happens when I cultivate it? And so then I started doing kind of open mics and really exposing myself to what was out there. And so it happened really quickly too, which is why I know it was partially me but also partially destiny. So I did one open mic and somebody came up to me and they were like, oh my gosh, you could have been like a headliner for that gig. And I was like, whoa. And that was somebody that was really frequent in the poetry scene a lot and someone I respected. And then I did an urban griot slam, and I placed second in that slam with a lot of poets who've been doing work for a long time. And then the next slam I did, I won. And that opened up, lots of doors for me very, very, very quickly. And I was suddenly immersed in this world. And so, it was rapid. It was baptism by sunshine, I like to say.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. And it was, it really felt like it was meant to be. And so after kind of performing for a while, I quickly got into facilitation because I think by nature, I'm a nurturer, I'm a teacher, I like to share. And again, that part of my career developed really quickly as well. And I started teaching slam poetry, locally, then nationally and internationally. And so poetry has been like such an amazing space. And actually, it's the space that allowed me to get into film, because I made a poetry film that somehow got nominated for an award. And then that opened up loads and loads of doors that I didn't even know this world existed. So it's been such a divine gift to me and the people around me as well. My son also writes, he's an MC, he's a lyricist. So we have that relationship within the family too.
Wow. I mean, I'm learning new things about you myself. That is just fascinating to me, you know. And it's so interesting what you said when you did the first cipher and people were asking you, you know, where can I see you perform? You said, I'm not a performer. It could have ended there.
Yeah.
You could have said, this is not my identity. But there was something, a little spark where you're like, well, if that's what it is, then I can do more of this. And I love the exploration that you went on, the journey that you went on to do more and more and more. So my next question is, it may sound a bit odd, but I just want you to go with me, because it's really important to be able to look at self and understand why and how life flows in the way that it does. So what I would like to know, because you said that you placed second in the first slam that you did, placed first in the second. Now, what is it about you that you have observed that enabled you to place second and then first? And it may sound like an odd question, but whenever performers get on stage, the response to you transcends talent a lot of the time, transcends ability. There's something else. There is a state of being that people are responding to. There is an isness about you. So what is that thing that you believe people are responding to?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I think with the first slam that I did, one of the judges on that slam was actually John Z. And I remember him writing in my notebooks. I was a fan of his work. I'd seen him perform his one-man show and other things, and really, really had a lot of respect for him. And he wrote in my book that your poetry is some of the realest I've heard for a long time. And I think that there's something about going on stage and seeing it as an offering. So rather than being in the space of how are people going to perceive me? Am I going to get that number 9? Am I going to get that number 10? It's, this is who I am and this is what I'm offering. And I think when I began, I really was seated in that. I was really seated in the sovereignty of that. Without really even recognizing it, actually. There's something about being totally naive and innocent, you know, and just rocking up as you are. And interestingly enough, I kind of lost that after a while. You know, you start to compete a lot, you start to perform a lot, you start to compare yourself to other people. And I really wanted to be a funny poet. You know, I think humor is such a superpower, and I'd be seeing slam poets have this comedic edge, and I'd be like, oh, I want a little bit of that flavor and all of that kind of stuff. And that's not naturally who I am in terms of performance, at least. And I tend to be, you know, funny and quirky when I'm not trying to be funny and quirky, right? Anything I think that you try and force normally falls flat. So there was a moment for me where I had to kind of think about, in fact, that question that you're asking, and go back to what is it that I bring to the room? What is my unique offering? And really stand strong in that.
It's so important what you've just said, because you are a living, breathing offering. And like I mentioned, it does transcend what you sound like or the words that you're reading off of a page. People are engaging and connecting with you as an energetic being. And your offerings, your poetry, and whether you sing or speak, those things become an invitation for people to really see themselves also in true vulnerability and true transparency as you offer that to the room. I mean, it's so lovely to hear your voice and then to really listen to your voice, because in your vocal code, there's a lot of patience. And I really pick up a lot of internal strength, which is not, and I say internal strength because people sometimes like to project strength outwards, and they like to appear tough or appear a certain way so that they can defend against hurt. And what I'm really picking up about your voice is a real type of inner strength that is really, really beautiful to hear. Do you feel strong?
Yes. Yes, I do. I mean, I often say that if I was to write a book about my life, I would have to kind of split it up into various different stories and characters, because I would read it even and go, that happened to one individual. You know, I was born into a war-torn country, so I've seen aspects of human nature that, you know, would make you want to tear your eyes out. And I think that, you know, that was my beginning, and for various reasons there has been a lot of challenges, a lot of trauma in my life. And within that space, I think that I've learned to cultivate something that means no matter what's going on around me, I hold on to the essence of who I am. So my faith in trouble never comes to stay, it always comes to pass, for example, is really quite solid, even in the deepest and darkest moments. I know, you know, as you go to bed at night and it's the evening, you know that the morning will come. So there's something really inside of me that does understand that I am here for a reason, and there is a divine purpose why I'm here, and I have survived all of the things that I have survived.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do feel strong within that space, definitely.
Right. I mean, I'm really hearing such a maturity, which is another thing that I hear in your voice. It's like the ability to see macro rather than always seeing in micro, understanding the trends of life, that bad or hard times, they do pass through. And that takes a maturity, and it helps with your resilience, because if you're so micro and you're so focused on the suffering when you are in a hard time, it's harder to understand that it is passing through.
Mm.
What I would like to know is, how has that macro view of life and developing your own internal resilience, how has that served you in regards to using your voice to do the things that you do in the poetry, in curating events, in writing? How has that served you?
I think very much so. You know, poetry is a difficult industry in the sense that poets are probably the most underpaid, undervalued, I would say, across entertainment. And I can say that with the knowledge of kind of being in the filmmaking industry as well, and, you know, having done the journalism and seeing how musicians are treated, etc., etc. So you know, there was a documentary actually by Amanoir, and I remember a poet saying in that documentary, when they were asked about how much were they paid for their first gig, they said, how much did I pay for my first gig? Right? So it's more the thing of that you will go there. And, you know, I did it for a very short period of time, but, you know, yeah, you'll rock up, you'll get your travel card, you'll go to the open mic, you'll pay your entry fee because you want the exposure and you want to be seen. And I think as poetry has grown and there's been many more poets, there are some poets, we don't have a union, that will do gigs for free. There are some poets who do gigs for next to nothing. And so what happens in that space is that the value never really rises until you get to the point where your name is really in lights. So I think that there is a challenge for many people. And so what has happened is that many people that, you know, were performing, say, a decade ago aren't around anymore, or they've gone into another industry or what have you. And I think what I've managed to do is kind of find a way to balance what I am really passionate about, and be able to keep my lights on. So, you know, I'm very much now known as a film poet because I occupy the film world a lot. So I do a lot of tours and residencies along with film. And that allows me to keep on doing what I'm doing, but in an industry that understands that artists need to be paid.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's so interesting, because as you were talking, you know, in order to curate events, you have to have a macro view of life. You just have to. You have to be able to understand the processes of how people work. You have to understand systems. And the other thing about you is that you are an attraction point. And it's not a vanity thing of everyone look at me. It's more about, as I mentioned, being so approachable that you would be a natural go-to when it comes to, do you know of a person that I can connect with about X? You would be a natural person to really ask about that. So how have you found, well, how did you start, should I ask, curating events? What was that process like for you? Did you find using your voice in that space any different from using your voice in the poetic space?
Yeah, I mean, I started curating events actually as the continuous professional development coordinator for an arts council project. So I was actually working on that, and that project was about facilitating artists and their development. And so as part of that, I would curate rather showcases and what have you. So that was the seed of it, and then starting to want to do events around my own culture and my own community, and occupying that space. And then with the film curation, that came about because when I made my first short and I discovered, as I said, this world that opened up, because the short film that I made, This Is Not a Thank You, it was nominated for an award at the South Bank called Shot from the Lip. And as a result of it having its premiere there, which was a real moment for me, you know, to have it at the Royal Festival Hall. I'd had a residency at the South Bank a few years before, so it's a real home away from home for me. But the judging panel on that award were really well connected, and so the film kind of just kept on getting picked up and even went internationally in terms of screenings without me doing anything. I had no idea. I'm not a film producer or anything like that, so I had no idea of that landscape. And I think that, you know, it was like a really wonderful time and a wonderful moment. But it then made me think about who else doesn't know what I didn't know. Who else doesn't get to be exposed to this whole wonderful network and all of these things. And what's also happening at the moment in terms of specifically Black film is that, you know, we're having a movement towards seeing more Black people on screen, more Black writers, more Black producers, but we've also seen that movement before and it's died down. I would say in the UK, especially in terms of television, when I think about the 80s and I think of the era of Desmond's and all of those types of things, the Real McCoy, we kind of had that moment where we're just, oh, Black people on primetime TV, and everyone got excited. And then where is it today? It kind of disappeared. So I'm really about contributing to this, not just being a moment, but a movement towards sustained inclusivity. Mm-hmm. And that I never want a child to grow up the way I did without seeing themselves on screen until they were a particular age. The first film that I saw with any kind of representation of me was Boys in the Hood, Nia Long, John Singleton's film. And that was the first time that I saw a Black woman kind of articulating in a way that I was like, oh, wow, that's akin to me. But also she was African American, right? So there was also that cultural kind of differentiation. But that was the closest. And I was pretty grown by that point. So, you know, when I think about that and I think about the generations coming up, I want them to be able to see versions of themselves. It shouldn't be a privilege for anyone to see that. We are all here and valuable and beautiful.
It shouldn't be a privilege. Yeah. That's such a big statement. It really is. And, you know, as you speak about your experiences seeing Nia Long on screen, I am certainly reminded of my own when I was growing up. in the 80s, I saw Maura Stewart and Trevor McDonald, and that was it. And Jackie Harper was there briefly. And that was that, really. And I really appreciate, people have all sorts of negative things to say about social media, and those aspects exist. But I'm really grateful to social media because what it's done is open the door for so many people to be visible. And so there's so much enterprise available now. There's so many opportunities that Black businesses and all businesses are creating for themselves. And for that, I am truly grateful. So how do you've spoken about the unknown and helping people to know what you didn't know, I think is how you phrased it. So how do you deal with the unknown in your own life?
Oh, I think it's a case often of, I think there's two things, if I'm really honest. There's moments where it's like, gosh, it's unknown. Can I find a way to kind of fill this out? I think that whenever you feel like you're in the dark, the impetus, isn't it, is always to go for the light. Where's the light switch? Where can I kind of, rather than sit in the darkness and say, actually, what is happening with the rest of my senses? So I try to go to that space. I'm like, okay, I don't have this information, but what can I feel? What am I able to sense in other ways? And that's a challenge. I'm not going to say that it isn't. You know, I think as human beings, we always like to know. Seeing is believing. We like to have the evidence before we leap. We like to know that, you know, there's a nice soft landing on the other side. And I think that, you know, working with the notion of, you know, feeling the fear and doing it anyway is an ongoing thing, you know, and some days are better than others. But I think that it's a dance that, you know, still excites me. It's a dance where I go, oh, okay, what is fear trying to teach me today? You know, what is it that I need to learn? What is it that I need to listen to? And yeah, just kind of finding the music in that.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing. And again, I keep going back to that word maturity, because when things are unknown, it's very character revealing, actually. And for you to say that you go further within is really a testament to your character and using your different senses. Have you ever, or should I say, what has your experience been in troubleshooting the unknown in your career? What has been your have you had a go-to practice to help you troubleshoot, to help you feel? Are you naturally a discerning person? Do you rely on specific spiritual gifts? Like, what is your go-to?
You know, it's really interesting because I've been also evaluating that recently myself. And I think that there's a part of me that's actually very innocent. And the innocent part of me is the part of me that allows me to be friendly and allows me to be open to people and allows me, I guess, in many ways to, you know, when you're in an industry where it can be, you know, it's very often ego driven. It's very much, you know, you were saying earlier that, you know, I don't necessarily have an energy that's kind of like, look at me, look at me, look at me. But that you kind of have that, and lots of people with slightly narcissistic tendencies, to be fair, not in a judgmental way, because I think that on the flip side, in order to be able to survive, in order sometimes to be able to give the offering that you need to give, you have to kind of feel like the world pivots around you, and that you have an audience that is just there and waiting to receive the gift that you have brought, right? You kind of need that a little bit. So I don't say that with any judgment, but at the same time, what that often does is mean that if you're coming from a place of compassion, if you're coming from a place of empathy, if you're coming from a place of sensitivity to emotion, then you have to be aware, in a sense, that not everybody's going to be that way. And it's taken me a while, actually, to really recognize that, no, you are operating in quite a unique and different space, and that's fine. But it means that your innocence also has to have a level of discernment as well. And so, to go back to your question about the troubleshooting, I think I still go to that space of, you know, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it truthful? You know, the next word or the next action that I'm going to take. I still come from that place, but I also understand that, like with my words, in terms of a poetic space and a performance, I may give an offering and not everybody may pick up on that, or not everybody may like that, or it might not resonate with everybody. So I think you've got to go to the places where you have allies, and you've got to go to the places where you have kinship and synergy, and focus on those. And actually, what I've really learned is, you know, a no isn't always a no permanently, but when somebody is giving you that energy and giving you that vibration, give them that space. Don't force it, don't push it, because ultimately I found when you do, it's holding the vibration of no. It's still holding that, rather than the vibration of yes, because actually that was the seed of the conversation, even though you've managed to turn it other way, you know, another way, which you can do with, you know, charm, persuasion, whatever. But yeah, being able, again, I guess, in a certain way, to sit within your sovereignty. And so I think when you're in your sovereignty, you sometimes wait for things to come to you. You don't always have to be, you know, reaching out or doing everything yourself. You can actually wait for things to come to you and receive them, and then act accordingly. So I think that, yeah, interesting enough, you know, stillness often, you know, going back to the core of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, I think always makes the problems and the troubles, it puts them in context, it puts them in their place. Because they'll always be there, they'll always come.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And, you know, listening to you even further, and you've mentioned the word stillness, and it's something that I detected in your voice. But you've got this wonderful ability, because a lot of people who are embodied, more embodied, such as yourself, and more still, sometimes have a tendency to hold their voices further inside of them, and so they don't project as much. And for you, there's a combination of being still, being embodied, but still sending the voice out to do its work. And that's such a powerful combination. And then you spoke about sovereignty, not authority. You said the word sovereignty. You've said it several times during our conversation, and it fits, again, what I'm hearing in your voice. And you talk about allowing things to come to you. And I guess sovereignty is the certainty that they will. And what I would love to know is, have you deliberately cultivated that, or is it something that you've unknowingly cultivated? And how is it serving you?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think that people kind of reacted to me and commented on what you've picked up, and then me looking at, you know, what is it to be in my sovereignty? What is it to be in my divinity, and harnessing that and looking at how can I cultivate it in a way that is most beneficial to myself and others. And it's a really interesting space to be in, because again, I think that you can come up against a rub, often when people aren't able to do that and they see it, they can find it quite frightening, or they can find they can't really position you, or it's a little bit threatening. I mean, as gentle as my energy can be, I had an experience recently where somebody said they couldn't look me in the eye, and it was really bothering me because I'm an eye looker. Like, I like to directly look at people, especially when I'm speaking to you. It's a very important point of connectivity. And also it's me saying that I'm here and I'm present and I'm seeing you. And this person could not look me in the eye. And we hadn't had much interaction. We've been in like similar spaces and a couple of workshops together. And, one lunchtime I just sat down next to this individual and I just said, we haven't connected. We've been on this course for a couple of days. I just wanted to say hey. And afterwards, they admitted that they were afraid of me. And I've heard that a number of times throughout my life, like this fear, or I'm scared, or you threaten me, or this kind of thing. And it's a really interesting dynamic to kind of look at and go, oh, okay, yes, that's about you, but what is it within me that you're reacting to? And I think sometimes when you are seated in something that is bigger than you, because of course sovereignty is, then it can be difficult for people to try and take that in, or they want to make you smaller.
Yeah, wow. You speak about your divinity, and I'm really happy to hear that you don't take those things personally, because when it comes to sovereignty, anyone that feels threatened by it is just not connected to their own. That's all it really means. And I'm glad that you're able to look into it without making it personal or something that you need to fix or change. And it's, being around you as I have, and talking to you now, it's hard to really imagine somebody having that response. But then people respond based on their own conditioning, the stories they tell themselves. There's all sorts that go into that. So has your sovereignty ever led you to making decisions that were unpopular?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of a mix of sovereignty and sometimes that gut intuition that you have that I think comes along with it. Yeah. And so if you can't language and you can't justify in a world that we live in, which is very verbose and is very much from a space of mentally, how is this equation working? And so when you're dealing with intuition or you're dealing with spirit, sometimes you don't know what the equation is. You just know that, oh yeah, that doesn't feel great. That doesn't feel good. Or I had that feeling in my belly, or I had that prickling on my skin, or whatever, however it articulates for you. But a knowingness, especially as women, I think that we definitely have this heightened sense of the world, or a sixth sense, within the world that we operate in, which is not always validated. It's not always seen as something that can be taken on board. I mean, if you're going to walk into a board meeting and go, oh, you know what, I just don't really feel good about that, so we're not doing it. People are going to be like, what? Do you know how much that deal is worth, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I personally and professionally, I've made decisions based on that. Just I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel right. And I've also not followed that through, and always seen the repercussions of it. So, you know, I've also learned, you know, through the difficulty of it. And, you know, sometimes it's that we have to experience the burn before we actually don't need to go through that anymore, in order to be like, actually, you know what, I've got the scar from last time. I know what that feeling is. I'm going to go with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, completely. I mean, the interesting thing is that, you know, if you are listening and watching this, and you are in the boardroom, and you do have a position of power in your corporation, with sovereignty comes a lot of authority. And it's, no, the corporate world doesn't respond to feelings speak per se, but it does respond to authority. It does respond to being around you and feeling how authoritative you are, feeling that in your being. And when people are around people who have sovereignty and are authoritative, there's a trust that happens. And that trust enables you to have that kind of say-so within your corporation. So I would encourage anyone out there who believes that that kind of thing is simply not allowed. It may just be an articulation thing. You may not say, oh, I had a dream last night. Do X.
Don't say that.
Don't say that. You know, you may not articulate it that way, but there is a way to articulate authority and sovereignty in a way that people can understand. I would love to know, because you've built and created certain things, and I would love to know, if you can speak about it, what you are creating next.
Oh, that is, well, yeah, I cannot, well, okay, so let me preface this, my answer or my non-answer, with what I found for me is that I need a gestation period. So I kind of need to hold ideas in the same way that before you give birth, you have your 9 months of just feeding, nurturing, growing, and then kind of give birth to it. I'm also Piscean, so we kind of have that kind of energy too. So I do have a number of things that I'm so excited about in terms of my poetry, in terms of Caramel Film Club, which is, you know, where I do the film screenings, and a lot of wonderful collaborations there. But people will have to follow me on Instagram or Facebook to find out that as it happens. But I think 2020 for a lot of people, I mean, numerologically, and I've got an interest, I'm no expert, but, you know, it's a 4, so it's about foundation, and it's about kind of building from that space. And I think that it's going to be a wonderful time for lots of people, and yeah, myself included.
I love that answer. Yes, take your time, and you incubate and you contain and you do what you got to do. And where can people follow you to get all of the juiciness that is going to flow out?
Yes, I'm easy to find, so easy to stalk, because I'm the only Be Manzini in the world. So I literally am. So it's at B, as in Be Manzini, Manzini, and you can find me on my personal socials, or you can find Caramel Film Club stuff on the website, and we have a meetup group as well with over 5,000 members now. So get on that; it's free to join. And yeah, always welcoming new people and new faces, and it's really about people coming together and having a communal experience, which I love to facilitate. But yeah, there's definitely going to be more stuff from me. I'm going to be in Manchester on Thursday with the film Atlantique, which is the Mati Diop film, showing poetry and doing a workshop. So I've done a few events around that already, but it'd be nice to do some out of London. So yeah.
So what date is that, just for people?
On Thursday, oh gosh, I'm still in Christmas and New Year's mode. I think it's the 11th. Thursday's the 11th. Yeah.
2020. Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, that is amazing. Thank you so much for this. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. It's been my pleasure. Like, my goodness, your voice is so yummy to me. It really is delicious. And it's been my pleasure to just take it all in and to really get to know you on a deeper level, and to understand all of the, well, not all of the components, but some of the components that make you you. And it's been my absolute honor. So thank you so much. Please follow Be Manzini on all the socials, join the Caramel Film Club, get involved in all of the juicy offerings that she has and that are coming up for her. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Sharleen the Vocal Alchemist. If you have not subscribed, why not? This is the time to subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notified for all the juicy, yummy content coming your way. And B, you still there?
Yes, I am still there.
You're good. Oh, there you go.
There you go. I had a call coming through.
Right. So thank you so much. If you stay on the line, I'm just going to stop recording. And that is Vocal Code Conversations. See you later.